lottery winners.
Well, what about lottery winners?
Well,
they tend to become miserable.
Notoriously, things don't go well for them.
No, they don't.
A lot of the time.
No.
You'd assume that you might assume that everything would be rosy here on in, sort of thing, but.
Well, it's a very relevant observation, and indeed Emil Durkheim, the sociologist, wrote a book, I think published in 1897, on suicide.
Yeah.
And two of the things that he pointed to that caused suicide were what he called anomie, being without any kind of structure or having a secure place in society, and egoisme, which is, the ability to do exactly what you want and not observe common conventions and rules, and that each of these led to people feeling deracinated, at sea, and raised very sharply the chances of suicide. In a sort of small way, that's what I'm saying about Western societies generally, that we're all in this position of having too much offered to us, and instead of it making us happy, it's actually making us...
And it kind of gives us feverish expectations.
Yes.
There's the Paris syndrome that the Japanese sometimes suffer from.
Yes.
Where they have this incredible expectation of what Paris is going to be like. It's incredibly romantic and beautiful and wonderful, and then they get there, and sometimes the reality clashes painfully against your expectation, and so we expect so much, and maybe we need to sort of temper our expectations a bit sometimes.
Well, there's undoubted wisdom in that, because the higher your expectations are, the lower the chances that anything that actually happens will be fulfilling for you.
And not just high expectations, but very rigid ones as well. Rather than having open expectations, this has got to be, by the age of this, I should have this in my life, I should have met this person, and undoubtedly it won't work out like that.
Well, to bring things back for a moment to hemispheric differences, the reason we have a left hemisphere is to enable us to bend things to our will, to control them and to have power to manipulate them. Very necessary for all the things that build a civilization,
and survive.
Or even survive at all as an animal. But on the other hand, it is not wise, so it is not a good principle for living, and it's a commonplace of wisdom literature that the wise person doesn't try to conform reality to their will, but tries to conform their will to reality. That way, you ride the waves rather than get smashed on the rocks when they take you unawares.
And it's not being defeatist at all, or being,
absolutely not.
It's kind of the opposite, really.
Well, you will find that if you do adopt this attitude that whatever comes to you can be of use, and to see the good in it, rather than have a very fixed idea of what you want and find that everything else is not that thing that you want, that it does bring happiness and brings a huge sense of relief. You're no longer obliged to make all these things happen for you.
And no longer obliged to desperately seek approval from other people as well, because that could be, if everybody likes me, or everybody thinks I'm great, then somehow my life is going to be better. But of course, there's always that doubt, isn't it? Maybe you're not the fairest of the land. Maybe someone doesn't like you. Maybe they don't approve of you. And it's a losing game.
It's very much a losing game. And the most extraordinary examples to me have been, in my career as a psychiatrist, I treated a couple of ballet dancers, and they were probably the most striking example of this, because both of them were really very successful. But it's a deeply competitive world, and although one of them was certainly the best dancer in her company, she was always haunted by the idea that there might be somebody in Paris or Moscow who was a greater dancer than she was. Yeah. So in other words, instead of seeing that her cup was 99% full, she was obsessed by the 1% that wasn't there. And, that's just not unusual. It's a thing that we all tend to do. If you wanted to make people utterly miserable, you would set up a system whereby people were constantly scoring one another and competing with one another. It's called social media. Also capitalism. It has its values, of course, and I don't have an immediate answer to how to make a better way to live, but it is based on greed, it is based on competition, it's based on dissatisfaction, which then can then be met by buying a product.
So, one thing that seems to make people more fulfilled is collaboration within groups and this connection with other people, that you're working together
100%
in the same way for the same
yeah.
ideal or purpose. And as you say, we seem to live in a society where we're set up against each other. Who's got more likes on social media? Who looks better who looks better? Who's got more money? Who's having wilder experiences? Who's more intelligent? And so on, who lives the longest. Everything seems to be competition.
And the more it's global, and the more images of people you can get, the more your ideal is becoming almost unattainable. In the past you might have been very happy that you were the prettiest person in Nottingham, but now there are all kinds of people.
You've got the whole world to compare yourself
with. And so it's always a losing game. But I want to just reflect on the way in which popular science, such as put about by people like Richard Dawkins, has given a very skewed vision of what humanity is. It's not just Dawkins, and I don't mean to disrespect him, but there's a tendency to see us as rather squalid apes that are noted for their competition, for their violence, unless it's somehow contained, and for their aggression. And although this is definitely an aspect of being a primate, they all have these tendencies, what is missed out of this picture is that we are also fabulously good at cooperating, actually enjoy and get pleasure out of cooperating, about supporting one another. That's actually one of the ways in which we get maximum affirmation of ourselves and pleasure in life. So we are good at that, but we would never have got, we are good at competing, but we would never have got to be as successful as we are in terms of evolution if we hadn't been able to cooperate. Our bodies are a wonderful image of cooperation. There are 38 trillion cells in my body, and that's not counting the bacteria, almost as many, that are also inhabiting my body, and on whom much of my health depends. And they all at one stage were single-celled organisms that might have competed, but in fact they gave up their autonomy in order to be part of a bigger whole in which everybody, I say everybody, but I mean every cell, benefited. So the whole business of evolution is actually not one of vicious competition, it's one of cooperation. At least as much, anyway. If you can't swallow that, then at least as much. I'm not saying there isn't a place. There is a place for competition. And it's perhaps an example of what I was saying earlier. You asked me, give me an example of how we need, each thing comes with its opposite. We need a bit of competition. And we need a bit of cooperation.
Yes, so the temptation might be to say, what you're saying is that we should never have any competition, which is ridiculous.
Absolutely wrong. And, a lot of educational policy has been founded on the idea that it's bad that children should be competing. Not at all. It's exhilarating and good for them, and it makes them feel that they've got something to strive for. And, I know when I was growing up, education was largely telling you about things you weren't good at. I think there's been a swing the other way, so that children are in a kind of dream world of affirmation, which never actually prepares them for the reality of finding out that they have many things that it would have been good if they tackled them a long time in the past, but people were too busy affirming them to say, actually, you need to do a bit better.
Yes, you're absolutely perfect and wonderful as you are.
Disaster.
Well, it made you unhappy, because what's the point of life then?
Well, it creates miserable narcissists.
Yeah, yes. Where are you going in life if
Yes.
you're already there?
Yeah. So it's a balance, as always. It sounds very dull, but it really is the secret of every kind of wisdom is a harmony of opposites.